Billionaire faked death to test her family, but what her stepmother did will make you cry. The sky mourned before anyone else did. Dark clouds gathered above the estate as the limousine doors swung open, and mourners in black spilled out like shadows. The funeral was supposed to be private. But when someone as wealthy and young as Ava McKinley dies, suddenly, at 27, people come running. Not for grief, but for opportunity. Her mahogany casket gleamed under the glass canopy as her closest family stood near, or rather, acted close. Her father's widow, Elaine McKinley, dabbed the corners of her eyes with a silk handkerchief, careful not to smudge her lipstick. Cameras from discreet local press circled the property like vultures, capturing the staged sorrow. "She was like a daughter to me," Elaine whispered dramatically to the man beside her, Ava's former estate lawyer. But what Elaine didn't know, was that Ava was watching. From a hidden room above the main hall, behind a one-way mirror, Ava sat cross-legged, heart pounding. Her long auburn hair was tucked into a hoodie, and beside her, a retired private investigator adjusted a camera feed that showed every corner of the service. "She didn't shed a tear," Ava said softly. "Not one real one." "Are you sure you want to see this?" the investigator asked. Ava didn't blink. "I have to. I faked my death for one reason, to see the truth." 3 weeks ago, Ava had signed a death certificate forged by a foreign contact. 2 doctors had been paid. A luxury yacht explosion had been staged off the Amalfi Coast. And now, her stepmother, the woman who married her father 2 years after her real mother died, was finally showing her true colors. Down below, Elaine squeezed the lawyer's arm with a sudden smile. "Do you think she updated her will before the accident? Or did she leave it all tangled in probate?" That was enough for Ava. She gripped the edges of the seat as her throat tightened. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about family. About loyalty. And most of all, about pain, the kind that doesn't come from losing someone, but from realizing they never truly loved you in the first place. As the fake eulogy began, the priest stammered over the words. Ava was a bright light in this world, taken too soon by tragedy. Elaine was already scrolling her phone beneath her black veil. And that's when Ava noticed something that made her stomach drop. Elaine was texting. And the message read. Phase 1 complete. Schedule the meeting. She's not coming back. Ava's hand flew to her mouth. She wasn't just grieving her stepmother's betrayal now. She was beginning to fear what Phase 2 really meant. The last time Ava truly smiled was 2 years ago, before the shadows crept into the McKinley mansion. It was the spring after her father's heart attack. He'd survived, but he was never the same. Weak. Distracted. And vulnerable, especially to the charm of a woman named Elaine Monroe, a well-known fundraiser who attended Ava's charity gala, by accident. Ava had been suspicious from day one. She remembered the exact moment it all shifted, a Sunday brunch in the Rose Garden. Her father, Charles McKinley, sat beside Elaine, their hands too close on the tablecloth. Elaine's laugh, that musical, polished tone, felt too rehearsed. Too perfect. "She saved me," Charles had said, beaming. "When I collapsed during the art show, Elaine called the ambulance and never left my side. That kind of love is rare." Ava sipped her coffee slowly. "That kind of timing is convenient." Elaine chuckled sweetly, brushing invisible dust off her silk blouse. "Ava, darling, I know change is hard. But I'm not replacing your mother. I just want to be part of this family." But Ava remembered how, just a week later, Elaine started making changes. Her father's personal assistant was fired. The longtime gardener was replaced by a more discreet staff. Ava's access to her family's financial records suddenly required clearance. And then came the argument. The one Ava replayed in her head every night. "You're manipulating him," Ava had said, standing at the top of the staircase. Elaine looked up from the foyer with cold steel in her voice. I'm protecting him from stress. From ungrateful distractions. I'm his daughter. Elaine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. For now. That's when Ava knew. This wasn't about love. It was about control. 2 weeks before her staged death, Ava had followed Elaine's car one rainy evening. She wasn't expecting to find much, maybe a secret lover, a luxury shopping spree. But what she found chilled her to the bone. Elaine met with a man in a black Range Rover, outside a quiet legal office. She handed him a thin folder. Ava used her phone's camera to zoom in just before the handshake ended. The label on the folder read, "Revised Inheritance Strategy, Immediate Execution." Ava was done pretending. She hired a discreet PI the next morning. She began writing handwritten letters to her few real friends, sealing them in envelopes labeled, "In case of my death." And then she made the call that started everything. Back in the present, Ava sat in the observation room, watching the funeral wind down. The mourners were already whispering about who would inherit what. But what none of them knew, not Elaine, not the lawyer, not the vultures dressed in black, was that Ava had written a second will. One that wasn't about money. One that was about justice. And she was just getting started. Elaine McKinley looked like a woman in mourning, black satin dress, lace gloves, tear-dabbed cheeks. But behind the veil, her eyes were dancing. The guests had left. The casket had been lowered. The media vans rolled away. And now, inside the marble parlor of the McKinley estate, Elaine poured herself a glass of champagne. To Ava, she said to no one, lifting the glass in a mock toast. She didn't flinch as thunder cracked across the sky. The storm outside was growing violent, but Elaine only smiled wider. Behind her, the fireplace glowed quietly. Beside her on the table lay an ivory folder, the very one Ava had seen that night outside the law office. Elaine flipped it open and ran her manicured finger across the first page. Estate control transfer, pending confirmation of death certificate. 2 more days, she whispered, grinning. Then the door opened behind her. The family lawyer, Gerald Winston, stepped inside, carrying a small leather briefcase. He looked tired, damp from the rain, and hesitant. Elaine turned to greet him like a hostess greeting an old friend. "Did you bring the documents?" Gerald hesitated. "Elaine, I don't feel right pushing through this so soon." She approached him slowly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Charles would have wanted this. Ava made terrible decisions. She left things messy. She needed guidance." "Still," Gerald replied, "a full estate takeover within 72 hours of a death. That's unheard of." Elaine stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Gerald," she purred, "don't make this complicated. You've been paid generously. And I'm sure your firm wouldn't want complications surfacing." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Gerald swallowed hard and nodded. From her hidden vantage point above, Ava watched everything through the hidden camera feed. She'd planted microphones in the study 3 months ago, before she even planned the death. The PI had upgraded them to live streams. She stared at her stepmother in stunned silence. "She didn't even wait a week," Ava murmured. "She's celebrating." The investigator beside her raised an eyebrow. "She's got no doubt you're gone. That means you've got the element of surprise." "I'm not using it yet," Ava said. "Why not?" Ava's voice dropped, cold and controlled. "Because I want to see who else is rotten." Later that evening, Elaine sat alone in the study, flipping through old photos. She found one of Ava, 16 years old, smiling in a summer dress, holding a trophy at a school fundraiser. Elaine's smile curled cruelly. "You never did know how to keep your mouth shut, sweetheart," she said aloud. "But at least now, you never will." She set the photo face down. What she didn't see was the blinking red light tucked inside the flower vase across the room. Recording. Watching. Waiting. Ava had the footage. She had the proof. But what she didn't have, yet, was the final piece. Who else knew she was supposed to stay dead? It started with a lie, a small one. Ava had told her assistant she'd be off the grid for a weekend getaway. She told her housekeeper not to clean the East Wing. She told her driver she'd fly commercial for once. But behind every casual excuse was a brick in the foundation of her grand escape. The plan to die didn't happen overnight. It was designed, rehearsed, and executed like a performance. She had to disappear to learn who her enemies truly were. It began in the office of Julian Hale, a discreet former intelligence contractor who now worked as a private investigator. The man looked more like a literature professor than a spy, wire-rimmed glasses, tweed jacket, calm voice. "You understand," he said, folding his hands, "if we do this, there's no halfway. You die. Your identity dies. And if anything goes wrong, no one can know you're alive, not even the police." Ava nodded. "I'm not scared of dying. I'm scared of dying without knowing the truth." Julian tilted his head. "Then we'll need three things: silence, money, and a very convincing body." 2 weeks before the funeral, Ava boarded a private flight to Naples, Italy. Her staff believed she was visiting a spa retreat. In reality, she met with a contact from Julian's network, a Croatian mortuary doctor named Ivana. "She's roughly your build," Ivana said, gesturing to the metal gurney. A body lay there, female, mid-20s, the victim of an unsolved boating accident. "No family. We changed the teeth, burn the rest." Ava turned pale but nodded. "Do it." The next step was creating the accident. Julian handled the logistics. A speedboat explosion off the Amalfi coast. A controlled fire started with a planted gas leak. Witnesses paid to confirm the blonde American woman boarded that boat. By the time Italian Coast Guards found the wreckage, dental records, altered by Ivana, confirmed the body as Ava McKinley. Julian's phone rang 36 hours later. "It's done," he said. Back in a borrowed flat in Prague, Ava stared at the headlines. Billionaire heiress Ava McKinley confirmed dead in Mediterranean explosion. Stepmother devastated, she was like a daughter. She didn't cry. But she didn't sleep either. Instead, she watched the first videos from the McKinley estate's cameras. The ones Julian had activated remotely as soon as the death was confirmed. The staff was already being replaced. Elaine's private bank account showed a mysterious wire transfer. And Ava's childhood dog had been sent away to a shelter. That one hit the hardest. 3 days before the funeral, Ava returned to the U.S. under a new name and disguise. She'd bought the townhouse across the street from her family's estate using an alias. Julian had outfitted it with monitors, recording gear, and a secure tunnel to the McKinley grounds. "This is your grave," Julian said, standing in the basement. Ava smiled bitterly. "Then let's see who comes dancing on it." The plan to die was perfect. But now, the real test was living through what came next. 3 days after Ava McKinley's death, the McKinley estate no longer looked like a place of mourning. The black wreaths had come down. The grieving staff had been dismissed. And the only flowers that remained were white lilies, fresh, expensive, and arranged by a new florist hired by Elaine. She liked lilies. Ava had always hated them. Elaine stood at the head of the dining room table, dressed not in black, but in dove gray. Her pearls gleamed. Her posture was elegant. She looked every bit the grieving widow, except for the way her eyes scanned the room like a general about to divide spoils. Around her sat the inner circle. Gerald Winston, the lawyer, tense, eyes darting to his briefcase. Clara Brooks, a family friend turned consultant, who'd always coveted Ava's nonprofit chair seat. Reed Taylor, a distant cousin with more ambition than morals, whose biggest claim to fame was once being photographed at a party with Ava. They weren't family. They were opportunists. Elaine lifted her glass. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I know we're still recovering, but as you know, the world moves fast. Ava left behind significant responsibilities, and it's our duty to step in with grace and order. Gerald cleared his throat. We should wait for the court to fully process the will. Elaine raised a hand. Oh, Gerald, always the cautious one. The will is simple. The original will, before Ava's little financial adventures, leaves executive control to me. Her changes were never formally notarized. Clara blinked. Wait, didn't she file an amendment last year? Elaine smiled, but her voice sharpened. Unfortunately, that document was never finalized. She died before she could complete the process. Such a shame, really. Reed chuckled. Tragic timing. From the basement of the townhouse across the street, Ava watched it all unfold in real time. Julian had tapped into the estate's security feeds. Each room came alive on her screen. Different angles, different voices, but one clear truth. They were already feeding on her name. She leaned closer to the mic embedded in the console. Pause the dining room feed. Zoom in on Gerald's face. Julian complied. Gerald looked uneasy. He doesn't believe her, Ava said. Look at his jaw. He's grinding his teeth. Julian smirked. Maybe you've still got one honest rat on the sinking ship. Ava leaned back. We'll find out. Keep tracking him. If he talks to anyone outside this house tonight, I want to know. Back at the estate, Elaine handed out slim black folders to each guest. Inside, you'll find my proposed restructure of the McKinley Foundation, my recommendations for the board, and a generous token of appreciation for your loyalty. Bribes, essentially. And everyone at the table knew it. What they didn't know was that Ava had already intercepted a digital copy of that folder. And one name caught her eye. Item 4B, liquidate Ava's private medical trust. Allocate 100% to Elaine Monroe McKinley. That trust had been created in her mother's name. For women's cancer research. Elaine wanted to erase even that. Ava's fists clenched. She's not just stealing from me, Ava whispered. She's erasing my mother. Julian glanced at her. You ready to make them bleed? Not yet, Ava said. But soon. The deeper Ava dug, the darker it became. She had always known Elaine was manipulative. But in the 6 days since her staged death, she'd seen more cruelty than she had in the last 6 years, and some of it came from places she never expected. That night, Julian walked into the townhouse control room with a hard drive in hand. Security feed from Clara Brooks's car. Dashcam. She didn't disable it when she left the estate. He slid the drive into the reader, and the screen flickered to life. Clara's voice rang out inside the car, sharp and mocking. Can you believe that girl left everything to that witch? Honestly, I'm impressed. If I married a man like Charles, I'd be greedy too. At least she had the guts to wait until Ava was dead. Another voice responded, male, arrogant. She faked kindness the whole time. Elaine used to joke that Ava was too soft to run the company. Called her a little lamb playing CEO. Ava stared at the screen in silence. The voices continued. You think Elaine had anything to do with the accident? No idea. But if she did, it wouldn't be the worst thing. Ava was just standing in the way. Ava's fingers curled into her palm. She was my mentor, she whispered. Clara. She used to read over my charity speeches before I gave them. Said she saw herself in me. Julian didn't reply. He knew there were some wounds silence couldn't soothe. The next day, another revelation hit harder. Julian returned from a field check, visibly tense. I followed Gerald. Ava perked up. And? He met with someone. Quiet coffee shop downtown. Took an envelope. Looked nervous. He handed Ava a photo. It was Mark Sanderson, Ava's godfather. Her late mother's best friend. A man she'd known since she was 5. Julian dropped the final blow. I got a partial transcript. Gerald passed him a copy of your second will, the one you hid in the safe at the lake house. The one that left the foundation to a rotating board of female entrepreneurs, and cut Elaine out entirely. Ava's stomach twisted. So Mark knew. Julian nodded grimly. He sold it to Elaine's legal team that same night. Cash. Untraceable. Ava sat in silence for a long time after that. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the foundation. It was the realization that every person she had once trusted was trading pieces of her soul for their own comfort. They didn't want justice. They wanted convenience. A dead Ava was easier. They all wear masks, Ava said softly. Polished. Smiling. Empty. I spent so long thinking if I worked hard, gave back, made them proud, they'd protect me. But I was just a placeholder. A lockbox. A liability. Julian knelt beside her. You're not a ghost, he said. Not yet. You still have a voice. But if you want justice, you have to make it loud. Ava looked up, something new flickering in her eyes. Not sadness. Not fear. Resolve. Then it's time, she said, standing. Julian arched a brow. For what? Ava didn't hesitate. To haunt them. For 6 days, Ava had been a ghost. Watching. Listening. Recording. Planning. But now, something shifted. Because someone, finally, was starting to look over their shoulder. It started with a knock on Gerald Winston's office door. He looked up from a pile of legal paperwork and blinked when Elaine McKinley herself walked in, unannounced. She was tense. More than usual. Her makeup was perfect, but her lipstick was smudged at the corner, something Gerald had never seen before. Elaine didn't make mistakes. She shut the door behind her and locked it. Gerald, she said quietly, I need to know something. He leaned back slowly. All right. Has anyone seen Ava? Gerald frowned. What do you mean? We buried her. I know. I know. But, she sat down abruptly. There've been things. Little things. A message I thought I deleted that reappeared. A call from an unknown number that sounded like her voice, and then just static. Yesterday, my car alarm went off and nothing was touched, except the glove box. Gerald stayed silent. Elaine narrowed her eyes. You were at that funeral. You saw her casket. Are you 100% sure it was her? He swallowed. They confirmed the dental records. Yes, well, you know as well as I do that money makes people confirm whatever you want. She stood and began pacing. What if she's alive, Gerald? What if she's watching us? Gerald cleared his throat. If that were true, she would have already exposed us. Elaine turned sharply. Unless she's planning something worse. Across the street, in the hidden townhouse, Ava watched the exchange through her secure video feed. Julian was already tracing the audio. Looks like you got under her skin. Ava didn't blink. Good. She leaned forward. Can you patch into Elaine's phone? Working on it. What about her security detail? Same 2 men. Both ex-cop, both bought. One of them has a gambling problem, easy to flip. Ava's eyes narrowed. Perfect. Plant the bait. Julian raised an eyebrow. What kind of bait? Ava smirked. Something only I would know. Something I never told anyone but her. That night, Elaine returned to her room and found a white envelope on her vanity. Inside was a single photo, Ava at 14, sitting in a treehouse with her mother's locket in her hand, the last photo taken before her mother died. It was never published. It wasn't in any archive. It had only ever existed in one place. Ava's private bedroom drawer. Elaine's breath caught in her throat. There were no fingerprints. No footprints. No broken windows. But the photo was real. And on the back, in Ava's handwriting. I remember everything. Elaine stumbled backward, knocking over a vase. The glass shattered. The flowers scattered. Her breath turned to fog. She was being haunted. The next morning, Clara Brooks received a small envelope in her mailbox, no stamp, no return address. Inside, a USB drive. She plugged it in at her office desk. It played one short video. A grainy black and white clip of her laughing in the car after the funeral, mocking Ava, calling her a lamb, joking about the timing of her death. Then the screen went black and displayed one line. You'll be laughing less soon. Clara dropped the drive like it had burned her. One by one, Ava was pushing them to the edge. Not with noise. With whispers. And someone, soon, was going to break. There's a moment, just before an avalanche starts, where everything is silent. Ava stood in the shadows of the McKinley Estate's private auditorium. She had once given speeches here, hosted charity galas, even celebrated her 25th birthday beneath those crystal chandeliers. Now, she stood behind the curtain, dressed in black, hair dyed a deep chestnut, her posture unshakable. Tonight was the McKinley Foundation's emergency reformation meeting, Elaine's big move to seize the nonprofit Ava had built from scratch. But Ava had turned it into something else. A trap. Julian's voice came through her earpiece. Security system overridden. We control all cameras and the live stream. If she runs, we'll catch it. Ava exhaled slowly. And the feed? Online. Hidden link. 3,000 people already watching. There'll be 30,000 by midnight. Ava's jaw clenched. She always wanted an audience. Inside the auditorium, Elaine stood at the podium. Her voice was polished. Her smile steady. We gather today to honor Ava McKinley's legacy, and to ensure her philanthropic empire remains intact under new leadership. The crowd applauded softly. Mostly donors, journalists, and silent opportunists. Elaine gestured toward the projection screen behind her. To begin this next chapter, I'd like to share a tribute I personally commissioned. The screen flickered. Her smile froze. The tribute never started. Instead, a different video began to play. It opened with a black screen. Then Ava's voice, calm and unmistakable. When I died, my stepmother cried louder than anyone. But now, let's see what she said when she thought no one was watching. The screen cut to a hidden camera clip, Elaine in the study, champagne in hand. To Ava, she'd toasted, smirking. She's not coming back. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. Elaine spun toward the tech booth, furious. Turn that off. Now. The tech crew shrugged, pretending confusion. Julian had locked them out hours ago. More footage rolled. Elaine handing out bribes in black folders. Laughing at Ava's mother's memorial fund. Calling Ava a naive, spoiled liability. Then the screen went black again. Another line appeared. The dead have seen everything. The lights in the room shifted, dimming, then rising slowly. From the rear of the auditorium, a single spotlight snapped on. It hit the aisle. The audience turned. And Ava McKinley walked in. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Elaine went pale. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Ava stepped onto the stage, slowly, deliberately, as cameras from the press began clicking wildly. Elaine backed up toward the edge of the podium like the ground might open beneath her. Ava stopped 2 feet from her. "You said I'd never come back." Elaine's voice was a whisper. "How?" Ava leaned close. "You planned to bury me. Now I'm here to bury the lie." The audience burst into chaos, gasps, shouting, phones held high. Elaine stumbled off the stage and vanished into the wings. But Ava stayed. She faced the crowd. "My name is Ava McKinley. I faked my death because I had no other choice. I was being erased, piece by piece, by someone who claimed to love me." Cameras rolled. The world was watching. And now, you get to see what real betrayal looks like, and what it costs. Backstage, Elaine tripped down the hallway, heels clacking, mascara running. She slammed open the door to the back exit, only to find Julian standing there, recording. "Going somewhere?" he asked. Elaine's face twisted. "You can't do this. You have no legal right." He held up a flash drive. "This has enough to destroy you in court and press." Elaine froze. "And Ava?" Julian added. "She has the rest." The next 24 hours moved like wildfire through dry grass. By morning, the headlines had exploded across every major news outlet, app, and social platform. Ava McKinley faked her death, returns alive to expose family betrayal. Stepmother accused of fraud, inheritance conspiracy, and embezzlement. McKinley Foundation scandal, hidden recordings reveal bribes and cover-up. News anchors speculated. Influencers reacted. Millions of viewers rewatched the leaked foundation meeting. It had everything the internet loved: wealth, betrayal, justice, and a woman who refused to stay buried. But inside the McKinley estate, it was quiet. Elaine McKinley hadn't been seen since the night before. Ava sat on the edge of her old bed, surrounded by boxes the staff had unearthed from storage. Her childhood room was exactly as she remembered, only smaller. Simpler. She stared at her mother's locket in her palm. The same one she'd worn in that photograph left for Elaine. The one she almost lost forever. Julian entered the room. "The district attorney wants to meet with you tomorrow." "Criminal charges?" Ava asked. He nodded. "Fraud. Witness tampering. Theft from a charitable organization. Maybe even conspiracy to defraud the estate." "She'll lie," Ava murmured. "She'll twist it like she always does." "Not this time." Julian handed her a flash drive. "We got her call history. Texts. Money transfers. Even voice memos." Elaine documented everything. Like she was writing her own trial transcript. Ava smiled, cold, steady. Poetic. Meanwhile, Elaine was holed up in a rented hotel under a fake name. Her lawyer had refused to take her calls. The press circled like sharks outside every property she owned. She stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, eyes sunken, hands shaking. On the TV behind her, a newscaster's voice played. Ava McKinley's comeback is being hailed as one of the boldest exposures of familial fraud in modern history. Elaine threw the remote. The screen shattered. But nothing could silence the world now. That afternoon, Ava held a press conference. Not at the estate. Not in some boardroom. At her mother's grave. Dressed simply in a gray coat and scarf, she stood beside the headstone as reporters gathered under gray skies. "I want to thank everyone who believed I was worth more alive than dead," she began. "When I faked my death, I was terrified. Not just of what I'd find, but of what I'd lose." She paused. "My mother built a legacy of kindness, resilience, and truth. I almost let someone erase it. But no more." The cameras zoomed in. Reporters jotted notes furiously. I'm reclaiming the McKinley Foundation. Every penny that was stolen will be returned. Every false ally will be exposed. And to those who tried to bury me. She looked directly at the camera. Next time, dig deeper. Back in the hotel room, Elaine watched from the shadows. She knew it was over. Not just her claim to the estate, but her image, her influence, her future. She opened her phone. Dozens of missed calls. Messages from associates cutting ties. Frozen accounts. Cancelled contracts. Then, a single new message from an unknown number. You always said I'd never survive without you. Turns out, I never really lived until you were gone. Elaine let the phone fall from her hand. For the first time in her life, she had no mask to hide behind. Only silence. 3 weeks later, the snow had begun to fall. The McKinley estate looked different under white, softer, quieter. As if all the shadows that once clung to it had finally been swept away. Ava stood in the garden where her father used to sit with his coffee and sketch the sunrise. His chair remained, weathered, empty, but no longer lonely. She placed a fresh lily on the seat, though it had once been her most hated flower. It's just a flower, she whispered to the wind. It doesn't mean anything, unless you give it meaning. Julian appeared behind her, holding a thick folder. All bank transfers from Elaine's shell companies have been traced. The foundation's assets are clean. Full restitution is underway. Ava nodded. And her sentence? She pled guilty to conspiracy, wire fraud, and obstruction. No trial. Minimum 8 years. A long pause. Ava stared into the trees. She won't make it easy, she said. Julian shrugged. She's out of power. And out of secrets. You beat her. No, Ava shook her head slowly. I survived her. That's different. Inside the main house, Ava returned to her study now. She removed the cover from her mother's old typewriter and began typing the opening lines of her new foundation initiative. Legacy isn't built with wealth. It's built with what we choose to protect when no one is watching. A soft knock at the door. It was Gerald, hair thinner, eyes more humble than ever. He entered holding a slim box wrapped in navy ribbon. From your father, he said quietly. It was stored with the estate papers. He left it sealed. Told me to deliver it when she needs to feel loved. Ava opened it carefully. Inside, a single flash drive, and a note. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're still standing. That means you're stronger than I ever was. Dad. She pressed play. Her father's voice crackled to life in an old video message, recorded years before his death. Ava. I know you see things in people I missed. Maybe that's your gift. Or maybe it's your mother's heart living on. If things go wrong, and you ever feel alone, remember, truth doesn't need approval. It just needs time. Ava closed her eyes. The tears came slowly, not from pain this time, but from the safety of finally being understood. Later that evening, as the fire crackled in the parlor, Julian brought in a letter, unmarked envelope, hand-delivered. Ava opened it cautiously. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 2 words, printed in clean black ink. Nice move. Ava froze. Julian stepped beside her, his jaw tightening. No return address. Delivered by courier from out of state. She turned the note over. One small symbol was printed on the back, a hawk in flight. Ava's blood chilled. Only one person ever drew that symbol. Mark Sanderson. Her godfather. Presumed fled. Presumed exposed. But apparently not finished. Ava slowly folded the note, her gaze hardening. The fire beside her burned louder, brighter, hotter. This isn't over, she whispered. Julian sighed. It never is.